All right, everybody, it's Boy Green Daily on the road. We're now in New Hampshire, but that's okay. We're a moving target. We're trying to mix it up and live it up. It's time for Boy Green Daily, Jets, Eagles. Let's get into it right now, baby. Zoinks! But it is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans. Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby. For me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. What's poppin', everybody? Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video program. Without further ado, it's time to go behind enemy lines to learn a little bit more about this Eagles team. And joining us on the program is Chris Franklin, the Philadelphia Eagles beat writer for NJGashdarn.com. So let's bring him in. Good morning, Christopher.
Morning, Paul. How you doing, man?
I'm fired up, baby. I am fired the hell up for Jets Eagles because I'm going to be honest. Jet fans talk about a lot of streaks. You know, there's like a playoff drought, the longest, most active playoff drought in the NFL, and quite frankly, in all North American sports. There's that Patriot thing where they've lost somehow 15 gosh darn games in a row. And then there's the Eagles, which is just kind of a weird one because they don't play as often. 0-12. Forever. All time. They've just never beaten the Eagles. They've just forever had their number, apparently. So this is another thing that we knew we were going to talk about preseason. So it's just fly, Eagles, fly, baby. That just seems to be always going on here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those crazy things. It's a fluke. I mean, going back to you think somehow through the 70s, I mean, you're going through disco, you're going through the blowout hair, you're going through the 90s and all that stuff, and that happened. You think at least once it would have happened. It's just weird. It's one of those weird coincidences that you see, and it's shocking. It really is. And to be honest, truth be told, to be honest, when look at the schedule this year, it's like, all right, maybe the streak's over, especially with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe the streak's over, but now with that, we're back here now when it comes to.
That's right, and that's funny because that's how everyone looked at all of those other things. They just talked about playoffs. Oh, thank goodness, Aaron Rodgers is here. Oh, thank God, Aaron Rodgers is here. And then he hasn't been, and boop boop. TBD. TBD is the inscription there. Now let's start here, Chris, because I'm interested in the tush push, bush push, brotherly love push, whatever the hell we're calling it now. Where did this phenomenon start? Because it's taken over the NFL, and the fascinating part is not only is it taken over the NFL, but everyone's trying it, and no one's doing it as well as the Eagles, which is crazy in a copycat league where everything's on tape. We are seeing how the Eagles do it, but people can't copy it perfectly. Give me the whole thing on, again, tush push, bush push, whatever the hell we're calling it. Yeah.
But it's funny because when we were going through all through last year, we're watching a training camp. This never came out, so we're just looking like, oh, okay, you're doing this. Then all of a sudden, you see like, I want to say it was one of the first couple. It was one of the first couple of games of these years of the season, and we see them come out in this weird thing like, okay, they're going to shift out of this. They're going to it's a weird look. They're going to shift out of it. Next thing you know, all of a sudden, just push it behind like, is this legal? Are we allowed to do this? Okay, all right, I guess so. No flag was yet going out. And it kind of helps when you have a Jalen Hurts who squats 600 pounds. You have that offensive line who already is big, who even last year was big in the middle, like even through centers through guard, except for Jason Kelce, and he's so big in his own mind. He's able to get down and get that low leverage to get into the middle of it. And they just almost like a pile driver just move teams down that way too. And it kind of helps too when you have like guys like Dallas Goedert and everybody else is pushing everybody forward. It's been tough to stop. And I thought it was very important. And I mean, during the league meetings, during this year's league meetings, Nick Sirianni went to talk to all the different coaches and GMs and everybody to explain what was going on and how it happened, and the fact that they let it stayed for another year so they can look for it. I thought it was very important for them to do that. And we've seen teams with people around the league. There's some detractors as well too. I mean, we saw Trayvon Diggs comment about bleeps cheating, and yeah, there's some detractors and some teams that are trying to do it. It's just a matter of just the leverage and practicing over and over again, and having the personnel to run it. I think that's the biggest thing with it.
And obviously they do. You've mentioned it. The Eagles have the best offensive line in football. Jalen Hurts is mobile as all heck, but it's even beyond the mobility. It goes to even that individual strength that you're talking about in the offseason. So I'm curious the Eagles' perspective. So you see this thing initially, right? You're like, are we allowed to do this?
Well, yeah.
Is that cool? Is that it? Oh, phenomenal. Okay, great. But like now that it's become the phenomenon that it has, as you being a guy that covers this team on that side of the line, are just like, well, this is definitely getting banned in the future. So let's ride this train as much as possible. Or how are you kind of perceiving this?
I'm looking at it as like I'm starting to wonder now if it's. I'm wondering if this is going to be the last year, because a lot of times, I mean, I think they only needed 8 votes to basically get rid of it, and I think we know the NFC East is going to count B3 right there, and then you see some of these other teams. I mean, I thought one of the more important voices that they had was Pete Carroll was on their side for doing this, and he was like, it's going to change the way that teams call their third down plays in order to do that, and I think as long as you got guys like him doing that, being the voice that says, hey, you know what, keep this in here, it's still football, I think it's going to be key for that. I think other than that, if they start to lose him and they say like, well, we can't do this, we got to throw the schedule, let's get rid of it right now. But yeah. I'm starting to feel the tide that it's probably going to be ending after this year, or they'll start to tweak it a little bit in some shape or form.
What's the percentage? Is it automatic? Is it 100% conversion rate basically on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1?
It's close. There was one team, I forget how offhand, but there was a team that stopped it, and it's pretty much as close on automatic. And it gets to especially when the Eagles are at home, like they want to worry about it this week because the Jets want to worry about because they're up at MetLife. But it's almost like an event. Everybody knows it's 3rd one, 4th and 1. All of a sudden, this crowd starts getting into it because they know, like, oh, we know what's coming here. It's like the Eagles don't even huddle, just like. They look over the sideline. Oh, we're going for all right, cool, and then just get into the thing. So it's becoming a little bit of an event when it comes to that 3rd and short, 4th and short. When it comes to that play, but yeah, they might savor it for a little bit. That's they're going to savor it for a little time.
And that's a little subtle what you said. Like sometimes they don't even have to huddle; they just kind of look over to the sideline and they go, and the sideline goes Bluebird Cobra. They're like. Here we go, baby. And for a team like the Jets that likes to rotate defensive linemen and have sub packages, and they do a lot of movement in a no huddle situation, like son of a. So that's going to be very interesting chess match during this Jets Eagles game. And I'm also curious of this because, again, we haven't seen every play-by-play of the Eagles as much as we have as closely as the Jets. I would imagine, although the success rate is incredible for the Eagles, that there are so many other things they could do off this: jet sweeps, pop passes, other things where the entire defense like, gotta stop this, and then ha, you bastards! Not only you're not stopping this, but have a little magic to you, hoo-yah, and then get them over the top. Have they utilized that at all, or is that just stuff in the back of the playbook they haven't even had to touch yet?
They've done a couple times where they do something where they act like they're going to go up the middle and then they pitch it out to the side and run on the edge. I'm waiting for the pop. I would love to see the pop pass happen because we know the Eagles ran a play, we'll say like a couple of years ago, East Texas with Lane Johnson. They threw a pass to him. He was an attack level. I want to see a play where you get a variation where you make either left tackle Jordan Mailata or right tackle Lane Johnson, put him as eligible receiver, pop it and throw it over the top. That's the perfect time to do it, but they haven't done it yet. So I'm just waiting for that. But yeah, the pass hasn't come off of it so much, but that edge rush, they put a couple of plays like that on film, so it makes teams think a little bit. And especially it's open there because now teams are starting to dive over top of the pile and trying in order to stop it. Like if you got somebody who can jump over the pile and try to get back there, more power to you. If you can try anything, I think teams are willing to try anything to try to do it right. Stop it right now.
Again, we're speaking with Chris Gaston Franklin, baby. Eagles beat writer for NJ.com. You can follow him on the X Twitter sphere, whatever the hell they're calling that as well, at C Franklin News there on the program. Okay, the Eagles are 5-0. And Bill Parcells is heralded in this side of the country. And I know what he would answer if I asked this question, but I'm going to ask you, Chris. Are they, the Eagles, what their record says they are?
Yeah. They found ways to win, and it hasn't been pretty all the time. It really has not been pretty at time. And I think that when you talk to Philadelphia, especially early on, like the concern they see all these other teams, say that teams like the 49ers, Miami Dolphins, like putting up these big numbers against the teams in these blowouts, where it's been some stomach churning a little bit. Some of these games, especially like the Commanders, like the team has a better roster than the Commanders, and all of a sudden you're going to overtime. You need an overtime win to you need a field goal in order to beat them. So I think they are, especially coming into the season. When you look at that schedule, they should be where they are right now, 5-0. It just hasn't been pretty, and luckily for them, it's not college football where you need the style points to try to get to try to get in the top four in order to be in a playoff. But they found ways to win. And that could be very helpful come time when later in the season, well, even in a couple of weeks when you play the Dolphins, when you come later in the season for the 49ers, potentially for that number one seed. And it's eventually in the playoffs when you're in these type situations. But they haven't been perfect. There's still issues with the red zone. There's still issues when it comes to stopping the passing game at times. So they have some stuff to work on, but they found ways to win. So yeah, 5-0 is 5-0.
Yeah, because there's two perceptions here. Because I had this one until someone talked to me. Now I can't get theirs out of my head, and I hate it. But mine was like, I'm looking at this Eagles team. I'm like, this is a vulnerable bird that's flying into MetLife Stadium. It's got an injured wing. It's flying. It's 5-0, but I'm kind of like, I don't know if that bird is really the bird I believe it is. So kind of rallying the troops here at Jets land, like, oh, this is possible. I can see it. And then, so that's what I've said. The Eagles are 5-0, but I see something. Then someone else said, okay, pal, well, I'll raise you this. They're 5-0, and they haven't looked perfect. And again, when they look better, they're going to even be better than that. I went, yeah, yes, that's an excellent point I didn't want you to bring up. So, again, when I bring up both of those, is it just more leniency to the thing I just said, or is there something to the fact that the Eagles haven't quite looked like the Super Bowl Eagles yet, that dominant fashion that we saw last year? They were piling on some teams pretty often.
Yeah, I think one of those games are coming pretty soon. I don't know if it's against Commanders. I don't know if it's against the Jets, but I think they'll get one of them in there, one of those things, one of those types of games in there, because it's either been where the defense looks extremely dominant and the offense is struggling to find its way, or it's vice versa. And I'm looking heading into this game. The Eagles' ground game, the ground game is still running pretty well with DeAndre Swift. He's still getting his touches. Kenneth Gainwell, when he comes in, he's still effective. And then you look at the passing game in the last few games where Jalen Hurts has looked like the Jalen Hurts of old, hitting receivers at a high completion rate. It's like, I want to say still like around like 66%. He's still hitting that one. He's 2 back-to-back 300-yard games. But I know the Jets haven't given up a 300-yard passing game in that one too. But the Jets are susceptible to the run. So I'm looking at this like they sell out. There's ways to beat this team. And I think either this one or the Commanders game is the one where you start to see like maybe like a 21, 24 point differential, and your team's like, oh, they're back. Okay.
Yeah. I see. Interesting. Well, I'm curious on Jalen Hurts because, the last memory I had of him was that playoff game against the Bucs where he did not look good. And I'm like, man, like maybe because I was a fan of Jalen Hurts coming out of the draft, and then the Eagles get him. And I'm like, all right, let's just kind of see what happens. So we go from that, my memory of Jalen Hurts, to he's the highest paid quarterback, or was until all these other deals, I suppose, was at a moment in time the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. Now, in all reality, that the time between A and B wasn't really that far. What the hell happened? Because it still stuns me as I just look at Jalen Hurts, go, holy crap, that was on whatever January insert, and now we're here on October 12th. And that time doesn't seem like it's very far. It's still stunning to me. Is it still stunning to Eagles people, or no, he just has transformed in such a way that this is the guy that's here. But man, it seems like such a quick evolution in such a short period of time.
I think the biggest surprise was when he went out to Southern California last year to work out with Tom House. I think that was the biggest transformation you saw out of that, because what he did there, he tweaked his mechanics a lot, because there were times where he was throwing off his back foot a lot and ball wasn't sailing as much, and he was a young quarterback. He needed to learn how to read these defenses too. So to get the combination of those two things when he came back last year, that's when I think you saw the biggest jump, especially when it came to that as a passer. Especially, we all know he could run. We all knew he can run those zone reads and the RPO game, but when he started really putting some touch onto the ball for those deeper passes, and it kind of helps you have AJ Brown along with Devontae Smith. But when he started really putting that in to put the ball into positions where they were able to make plays, I think that was the biggest thing. We saw it quickly in training camp. It's like, wow, okay, he looks more fluid. He looks more decisive where he wants to go with the ball. He's following through. He's looks like the prototypical quarterback, especially. And I think the more as the season went along, we started to see the pocket. The fact that he wasn't just running outside, just go, okay, one progression, two progression, okay, roll out and run that way too. I think that was the biggest key too. He proved that you're not going to be able just to rush from the edges and keep mush rush from and just say beat us. He can do that from the pocket too. So I think that that trip, whatever Tom House taught him, mechanic wise, and learning whatever he taught him, I think the Eagles should. I think Jalen should give part of that contract to him because he really helped him out with that.
And I saw earlier this season, there was like this tiff on the sideline between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, and people went, oh boy, storms a brewing. But it just meant that Jalen Hurts is like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me give you a lot more targets, and then we're going to score a bunch more points directly to A.J. Brown. So now I'm going to try that at my workplace, start yelling, throw my hands up a little bit, see if I get a little bit more reps in my life. I'm not sure if that's what's going to work. Has that just been – are they just a bunch of passionate guys? Because it seemed like A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts had a relationship even before he was ever traded to the Eagles.
It's like when you see your brother it's one of those things where you're walking in like, you took the last piece of pizza, man. What are you doing here? No, you're doing this. And you start yelling, why'd you take this? Why'd you take this? Why'd you take this?
Yeah.
A week later, we're playing a video game today. All right, cool. It was one of those type deals when you see that. And overall, when you look at the Eagles' offense, it's tough because you're trying to find ways to get the ball to Brown. You're trying to find ways to get it to Smith. Tight end Dallas Goedert, before him, he was on the side of a milk cart. You couldn't find him because you're trying to get targets to the other guys. And oh, wait, you got a couple other receivers and you got to try to get the running backs their touches too. This is one reason why I probably couldn't be an offensive coordinator in today's game because you're trying to keep everybody happy and trying to utilize them to the best of their ability as well too. And yeah, there's blow ups. I mean, even Jason Kelce last week, he had his own blow up. I mean, it's like because of frustrations with the red zone. But everybody just seems to everybody just goes past and go like, all right, we won. And I think that's another key thing. As long as you keep winning, it doesn't fester into something else as well too. And a lot of these guys are veterans too. They have a good core, so they stop that from happening and they go for that.
Well, as I look at this Eagles, pass catching statistics, obviously there's A.J. Brown. Wow, those stats stand out. There's Devontae Smith. You just brought him up. And then there's Goddard. And then there seems to be this massive void, at least in the passing game, in some of that production. Is it really those three guys and then everybody else? Or have we just had not enough reps this season from a passing perspective to spread the wealth a little bit to some other lesser known guys that haven't gotten their ops yet?
I mean, you think like that's mainly the main three. You can throw in DeAndre Swift sometimes. When they go empty, they throw him sometimes. To try to get one-on-one matchups against safeties and linebackers. Then you have like Quez Watkins. He's more their speedster guy, and they basically relegate to almost like a spacing guy and vertically trying to do it because you got to respect his speed. He runs like a 4.3 around there 40. So you got to, when you get him running down there, you can't go look at safety like, oh, you got to run back with him because you know what's going to do. But they just haven't targeted him deep. And then when they did target him short, there's been issues with the short yard game, making the right decisions running too. That what's happened last week. But you got Olamide Zaccheaus. I forgot about him. Olamide Zaccheaus. You have him too. There's so many options that they have. They're confident in that some of these guys just aren't. And I think a lot of these guys know that, hey, you know what? You're not going to get, like, if you're not Smith, Brown, or Goddard, you're not getting 10 targets a game. You're not going to get like 7 targets a game. You just know your role. And that's what they harp on, knowing your role. And I think these guys are starting they've bought in knowing their role. And I think as long as you keep winning or you're in position to go deep in the playoffs, I think that's what helps out a lot with that.
All right, let me ask you about this Georgia Bulldogs defense and their pursuits of winning a national championship. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles rosters, they attempt to try to win the Super Bowl. What has this defense lived up to the hype? Have they been able to do it? Howie friggin' Roseman, man, getting all these gosh darn Georgia Bulldogs the last couple of months. Not a bad strategy. Cotton, not bad.
Not bad at all. It was a bold move, I think, especially if you talk to some people when it's a bold move taking Jalen Carter, with all the issues going around there. But it's paid for. But just like the thing, it's paid off though. That's the thing with that because you look at the pressure. I thought he would be an impact guy. I didn't think he'd be an impact guy this early. I mean, he's drawing a lot of double teams already. the way he's knifing through those gaps, even with the double teams, he's doing a good job with that as well too. That defensive line overall as a whole, I think, is probably the strongest unit on this team. I mean, and that's saying something even with that offensive line. But I think that where the Eagles are vulnerable, they've gotten better. And I wouldn't have said this probably before the season. I think it's that intermediate area between like the safeties areas and the linebackers done actually a good job too. But it's probably that the safeties area and the secondary, because when after they lost Avonte Maddox, the nickel cornerback for probably the season with a torn pec, they really it's been a mismatch. You had to move James Bradbury inside the slot. You're using a lot of guys who are first year guys who didn't play last year, and undrafted rookies inside the slot to come cover that, and teams have started to attack it more. So if I'm the Jets, that would be an area where I would look at it. Thing is, they just added Bradley Roby, who actually looked all right out of nowhere. So it's like, all right, maybe they address that area too. So but overall, when you look at these Georgia guys, I mean, the only guy I think that still needs to develop a little bit more is Nolan Smith. You just don't have the snaps to play him in that much, because you got Brandon Graham, you got Josh Sweat, and Hassan Reddick. So they've been that defense. The defense has not been lights out all the time, but it's starting to round into form a little bit.
Well, to your point, Jalen Carter currently leading the Eagles in sacks with that 3.5 number, and they have all those other talented players you just mentioned. Chris, as we're getting out of here, we're going to have 2 Eagles people on. You, of course, handsome Chris Franklin on the show, and then we're going to have Glenn Irby on the program tomorrow. So this will be our last chance to kind of get your guys' perspective. What is your score prediction for this contest, Chris? Again, obviously, injury reports and things can change as we're recording this on a Thursday to what we get on Sunday. But with the information you know now in this capsule of time, what is your score prediction for Sunday? How's this playing out?
Yeah, remember I said there's going to be a blowout when it comes to 1 and 2? Yeah, I don't think it's going to be this one, but I think it's because I think the reason I think is they're going to keep it on the ground and just basically run it out for the most part and play off the play action. I think they do win. I think you see something like 28-14, 28-17 being that score. The Eagles coming out 6-0, but I think the Jets are going to have a decent showing, especially defensively. I really respect that Jets defense and what they're able to do.
Decent showing, but 0-13. That's what you're saying. that's what, let's just lay it on the line. That's what you are foretelling. Yes.
See, Zach Wilson surprised me a little bit. Because I just knew, like, I didn't like the pick. To be honest, I didn't like the pick to begin with when it came out there. I'm like, he didn't have. I didn't like the way he threw the flats. I didn't like it. And I thought coming from BYU to New York was like, well, that's trusting your guy, trusting your scouting for a lot. But I think you still have some outside. I think that defense with Robert Saleh, the way and that crew he's assembled there is. It can get some 3 and outs. It can create some havoc sometimes as well to create turnovers. So I look at that like, yeah, as if they didn't have Zach Wilson, if Aaron Rodgers in there, that team is an AFC Championship team. I really believe it. So. And we're probably talking again about before going out to Las Vegas. So that's one. I feel for you. I feel for the Jets. No, that's some serious. Like I feel like it's finally the stars are aligned. It's like. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
Here's what I've been saying in closing here. Something I said earlier, and people laughed. No doubt about it. But I am this eternal optimist somehow. It's very hard. Glass half full guy. I said when Aaron Rodgers went down, okay, that sucks. But everybody, do you remember the story of the greatest show on turf? Dick Vermeil comes out and says, "We will rally around Kurt Warner," and I said, "We will rally around Zach Wilson." People are like, "What? What do you mean?" We will rally around Zach Wilson, and we can still accomplish all our hopes and dreams. Trent Green went down, and Rodgers goes, "Hey, it's possible." And people are like, I don't know, Paul. That doesn't seem very possible at all. I'm like, you just got to believe. You just got to drink the Kool-Aid. It's possible. It could happen. And then after, the last 2 weeks, Zach Wilson arrow back up. You're like, well, was Paul onto something? So we'll see the duel between Jalen Hurts and Zach Wilson. What everyone signed up for before the season, baby. Yeah.
We just knew that was going to happen. All eyes were going to be on this game, and
yeah, absolutely not. Well, Chris, thank you so much for popping on. I tell everyone knew this that joins my, all my shows. I do a show every day. My favorite part of this business is, like I said, Jets Eagles obviously don't play very often. Getting to network and meeting new people from the other side and building those relationships, to me, that's some of the most fun parts of getting to do this every year. So, Chris, excellent to virtually meet you, my friend, and it should be a lot of fun, man. Thank you.
It really is. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great talking this game, and I can't look forward to talking in the future. Hopefully, it'll be great, man.
See you for Vegas. All right, Super Bowl.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Booyah. Let's make it happen. Let's speak it into existence. Everybody, make sure you follow him on Twitter at C Franklin News for the latest Eagles side of things as we get closer and closer to game day. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow morning on Boy Green.